Guys, go ahead.
How was practice today? Getting back into
It was good. It's nice and hot out here, and so it was good to be able to get a bonus day. I thought the guys came out. We got some stuff done, and it's good for the coaches too. You're able to tweak a couple things and start to really get, some of the finer details of the plan. And it was a step in the right direction, but it was just a step.
How much was Rob able to do today?
It was, he was able to, take part in a good amount of stuff, and so it was positive.
What obviously still very early in the week. But,
Yeah.
Is it leaning one way or another?
Here's what we're having contingency plans for either or. I think Wednesday, I'll have a much better idea. We're going to use every day, and that's the truth, especially as it relates to him.
Does him whether he plays or not play into what you guys do at center or guard?
No, that doesn't have any effect on it. The positive thing, Sarah, is that we've gotten a lot of work with a lot of different guys. And so the guys that are starting to work their way back, these are experienced players, and kind of like I mentioned when you guys asked about it last week, Rob's the one that, we'll see how he's feeling, but in the meantime, I think a lot of guys have been able to, improve and take their games to different levels, and so they've gotten a lot of work that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Sean, has reported over the weekend that Scott Frost is joining the coaching staff. Is that something you can confirm, and also what else can you share about his role and responsibilities?
Yeah, no, that is something that I can confirm. Scott's a guy that I've always, really respected from afar. He came out and spent a couple weeks with us this offseason, and there's a lot of mutual connections. I was an option quarterback. I remember watching him do his thing at Nebraska. I was like fanboying him. But as a coach, he was obviously a good player in the NFL, played on special teams, was a really tough DB, played the safety position. A lot of mutual connections. This coaching thing is a really small fraternity of people. And so we've crossed paths over the different years, and then just watching him from afar and then getting a chance to see him spend time with our group and a lot of different people on our staff felt like a really seamless fit. Wanted to get back in it. He'll help chase out with special teams, but he'll also have, involvement on offense and defense. But just to be able to get a quality caliber coach like him in the building, as you guys know, we've had a lot of turnover for the right reasons, and you can't have enough good quality people in-house. And really to get him in, and it was something that he wanted to do, and like I said, the mutual connections, and so there's a lot of people that are excited about it.
When you were interviewing Ron Gould, what kind of were some of the fact-finding things you did in the interview process with him to figure out how he is as a teacher?
When we were going through it, we were pretty extensive in our interview with the running back coaches in general, and you got a lot of recommendations from some people that we really highly respect, that their word carries a lot of weight. Jordan, I didn't know Ron, but he's immediately one of those guys, so smart, so conscientious. You talk about a guy that loves his players and really invests in them, and really gives them a tremendous amount of confidence, and they enable him to be able to coach them hard because they know how much he loves them and cares about them. He's one of those guys, sometimes I feel like I don't want to let him down, because he's such a great guy, he's such a special man. He has such a wisdom and a plethora of experience, and he's coached a lot of great players at the collegiate level, but coaching is coaching. And, I can't say enough about the positive impact that he's made, the consistency at which he operates. And, I love being around Ron, but really part of that vetting process was really more along the lines of, going through a really deliberate interview, but also then taking into account a lot of people's word that carries a lot of weight that spoke, very highly of him. And then even, Les and his group with their interaction with the scouts, Jordan, is so beneficial and helpful, because when our area scouts go into these schools, and how helpful are some of these coaches, and what does it look like for them to be able to coach? Michael Pierce recognized Thomas Brown a couple years ago, even though I had known him from us growing up in Atlanta area, and it was a similar feedback in terms of Ron, and it's worked out great.
A couple times you've mentioned the energy you feel from this defense. I'm curious if there's a time during camp or during practice that stands out to you. Think about, that's what I want to see from them, and that's where the energy comes from.
There's not any one moment, because there's been so many, Sarah, and I think it's been illustrated from really all three levels of the defense. I think you're seeing a lot of guys that love football. There's a youthful exuberance, but then there's also a maturity, even for some younger players. It's been really cool to even watch. These guys are such great leaders, but as they were knighted by their teammates, listen to Kobe Turner's communication even take a step in another level. Listen to Quentin's late command. You're watching the maturation of Jared Verse and Braden Fisk before your eyes. You're seeing, Troy Reeder and Roseboom do a great job of putting their arm around some of these younger inside backers. And so I've been tremendously impressed with the group as a whole. there's really just been consistency, throughout, whether it's the off season, the training camp, some of the joint practices, and ultimately it's about it showing up on game day, acting, interacting, and responding the way that we want, through the inevitable challenging times, but then also in the good ones as well.
You talked a lot about the chemistry between Jared and Braden.
Yep.
They also have very opposite personalities too. How have you kind of seen them? How do you see them kind of interact with each other?
I think there's a mutual respect, but it's like a yin and yang. Jared is always talking, and Braden is kind of observing, but he's taking everything in. And his demeanor reminds me very similarly to Aaron's. In terms of how locked in he is on the field, the focus and concentration. And so I think they're both uniquely themselves, though. I think that's what's great about it. We don't want guys to be anything other than themselves. Now, we want those core values and principles to be able to come to life, but within the framework of what's true to your authentic personality. And I think that's one of the things that I would hope people would say about here is that you can come here, you can be yourself, you're going to be pushed and challenged. There's going to be a lot demanded of you, but it's never going to be demeaning or disrespectful. And I think there's a good balance because that's authentically who they each are, where sometimes you got to tell Jared, hey, man, be quiet, get in the huddle and play the next snap, and versus just kind of, and Braden is just kind of taking it in.
If I could go back to the run game topic for just a second.
Yeah.
When you guys install things and you give them so much information in the spring and then understand you'll call back to some of it
Sure.
as the year progresses, is that a quantifiable characteristic, not just for coaches that you're trying to accelerate the teaching program, but also for players themselves, the ability to reach forward, reach back, and when you have
Talking from an offensive perspective?
Yeah, from an initial install.
I think the biggest thing that you can teach is, there's a variety of different schemes and concepts. When the guys understand the intent and then what are the mechanics, the calls, how are we targeting certain things based on the defensive structure, and the most important thing is how do you solve the problems that could arise. There's a lot of different ways people can displace 11 people, and so that's to me when you really get to the next level. I think some of our guys are getting to that point. It's obviously our job, to be able to provide clarity, to be able to give them the opportunity, to be able to have the capacity to solve the problems. But you also want to make sure that you try to eliminate any sort of gray. So that's part of what the offseason entails, is not only going against each other in competitive situations, but it is about preparing for the season. And that's why you guys hear us talk about the joint practices. That's why I think the best thing you can sometimes do is you go into it blind and you play rules ball. It's a little bit different than when you get, you have an inventory of film. Every single year is a new year, but you at least have an idea of, all right, what are some of the different things that we can expect and anticipate, no different than what they're doing from us. And so it's something that is very cyclical, and it's a year-by-year thing, but I think the good teachers do a good job of developing that inventory, and then based on, what the identity of the team becomes, you're able to make sure that you're not the jack of all trades, master of none, but you have an identity and there's an ownership.
Does this feel like today, like game week, or does that really start happening on Wednesday?
No, it feels real now. I think people would tell you the sense of urgency from me, but they're a little bit edgier around me. But yeah, I know this is a different sense of urgency in a good way. You want it to be uplifting and elevating, but real now, and so that's what you do this for. That's what we're excited about. I love these challenges and the opportunity that we have to go against a great football team on Sunday Night Football. What a cool thing it is, but no, it feels real, and today was an important step, and then we got to make sure that we hit the ground running on Wednesday.
Any thoughts on the Heat, Coach, coming later this week?
I love it. It's we might have to make a couple little tweaks, but I've always been, I like it. You get a little sweat in, you burn off a couple calories. A little different for the players. It's always about them. But we might have to get a little bit creative in terms of not being able to go as many consecutive plays. But hey, this is where we're at, and so certainly not going to complain. It could be a lot worse. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right. See y'all.